So my principles of computer programming class is coming to an end, and I thought it'd be cool to put elements of all of the different chapters together into one project. So that's where we came up here with Kick, Punch, Block. You can kind of think of it as like a rock, paper, scissors game, only with health points, opponents, rounds, arrays, some different elements here. But a kick is going to beat a block, a punch is going to beat a kick, and then a block is going to beat a punch. So that's kind of the idea of it. And I'm going to go line by line, just kind of my thought process and some of the development decisions that I made while putting this together. So the first thing I did is I created the scanner object to take user input, and then I initialized a bunch of variables and arrays. I just declared some as well. I tried to use some different data types. Didn't really need to, probably, because I made some bytes and some integers. They'd probably all be fine with doubles. And then what the main method actually is only 3 methods. The first thing it does is introduce game, which is a pretty boring method. It just prints out some text. The things I learned while using this, though, is I can type out sysout, control space, and that does the print line there, and then the escape character use as well. And let me just go along with it as well. So first thing it did here was print out this section, and it comes up to here and says, okay, we need to pick a country now. And the pick country, so that's where it's going to take that array that I showed earlier, and it's going to sort it alphabetically. And then it's going to be a do while loop, and it's going to ask the user, hey, what country do you want to fight in? As you can see down here. And then this is an enhanced for loop or for each loop, whatever you want to call. It's going to make country elements for the country's array, and it's just going to print each of those out. And then the user is going to input, and whatever the user inputs, it's going to get capitalized, and then it's going to use a switch case here to match up what the user put in to these different cases here. So it's the same that were in the array there. And then if the user did put in, say, USA, it's going to set the opponent name. Now, if the user puts in something that wasn't here, it's not going to change the opponent name, and the opponent name is going to stay equals to what it was initialized at, and then it's going to keep looping. So if we want to see that, Mexico, for instance, isn't on the list, so it's going to loop through that. And then to show you the capitalization, I put in lowercase USA, but it still matched it with the uppercase USA. Just going to go back up here to the main and say, okay, we need to pick the number of players now. With that, it just prompts the user, 1 or 2. Now, I haven't learned how to catch exceptions yet or write text cases. So this one, I mean, if the user puts in a character, it's going to crash the program as of right now. So that's definitely something to do. But basically, users should put in 1 or 2. If they do put in 2, it's going to set the Boolean as multiplayer to 2. And I think that's a more interesting route, so let's go that way. We're almost done, right? Only 2 methods left. So we got all this rest pick. We need to do the fighter now. So it's going to ask the user, who would you like to fight as? And then once again, this is an array sorted alphabetically, the for each, print out. And then user can input a name as a string. And then this for loop is going to loop over each element in the fighter name array. And it's going to compare it to what the user just inputted. And if they match, then it's going to set the Boolean valued name to true. So if they put in a name that wasn't on here, like my name, it's going to ask again, hey, enter a fighter name. But if they do enter something that matches, it's going to go on to the next one if it's multiplayer. So for this one, same thing, just ask them the same questions, although it is a different array. So it's a different name of characters, so it's going to check with that the second time. And then we're on to the last method, right? The fight method. So this is going to keep looping, and the idea is that each loop should be a round, right? So the first thing that's going to do in the round is going to get the selections of the actions, so whether the user wants to kick, punch, or block, basically. So if it's not multiplayer, so if it's just one player, it's going to ask the user for 1, 2, or 3, and then it's going to compare that. Now, once again, with this text case, I try to write as best I can, but It's going to check to see if the number is less than 1. So if these are put in 0, that's not a valid choice. They need to do 1, 2, or 3. Or if they enter a number higher than 3. So if they hit 6, 5, whatever, it's going to ask them, hey, what are you trying to do? And then ask them a question again. But if they enter a character, they enter a double, it's going to crash the program as of now. So that's something else that's also on the to-do. But if they enter a valid one, like 1 to kick, it's going to take the input and it's going to subtract 1 and then assign that to the index value of the array. So if we look at the action array up here, if the user entered 1, it's going to take 1 minus 1 and then the index value of 0. So that'll be a kick if the user enters 1. And then since it's one player, the opponent action is just going to be a random number 0, 1, or 2. But since we're doing two-player this one, just repeat the steps, and the player 2, sorry, I was just rereading it. So player 1 would pick up here, and then player 2 does the same thing down there. So now we have picked our actions. We're going to compare or check our actions. So this is where I was talking about what counters what. So user 1 did a kick, and then let's say user 2 does a block. That way we counter it right. So this is the one we're doing right now. So the user 1 entered a kick, the opponent entered a block. So what's going to do, it's going to do this method announce, just basically says fighter 1, and then the description of the damage, and then it takes the other parameter of the second opponent. It's going to print out here, oh, it takes big damage, as a counter, so that's going to set this boolean here, opponent hurt to true, and then the counter attack to true, because it countered it. Okay. And then we're going to update the health. So this was a counterattack, so yes. And then was somebody hurt? Yes. Was it the opponent got hurt there? What this is, and this is kind of like the interesting section. It's going to say, okay, it was a counterattack. The opponent was hurt. We're going to update the opponent health. We're going to set that value equal to the current opponent health subtracted by the damage roll. And that's going to take the difficulty parameter and multiply it by the damage multiplier constant. So player 1 damage roll, we're on a medium difficulty right now, so it's going to generate a random number between 5 and 15, and then it's going to return that number. So basically this is going to turn into a random number between 5 and 15, and then it's going to get multiplied by 2. So down here you can see that we took 28 damage, okay, so that was 14 that we rolled. So we actually rolled a 14 random number multiplied by 2 is 28 damage. So I like that. That was a good section to write. Now we're going to check for a knockout. And then basically it's just going to look at both the healths. If the health dropped below or to 0, then that's going to be a knockout, but we're way up there right now. We're at 72. But it's going to check the health level if it is below 0 or equal to. And then it's going to put them down for the count. It's going to count from 1 until 10. And then it's going to pause for half a second over each one. So let's go ahead and knock somebody out here. Okay, so we're down for the count right now. It's pausing that half second. It's printing out. And then it just prints the final text there. Just kind of gives the opponent name, player 1 name, the remaining health, what round it ended in, and then just some text. So that was my game. Some replayability, with a friend or something. There's some items on the to-do list. I need to learn how to catch exceptions. And then for the future, I'm going to make a UI for this game, probably in Unity. I'm going to try to convert all of the code over to C#, put that into scripts, and have some buttons to click instead of taking input from the console. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed. If you have any questions, please leave it down in the comments below, and I'll try to reply. But thanks for checking out this video. Thanks a lot. Have a good one. Bye.